All right, y'all thought that I might be fibbing. This is proof right now. The Letterman Podcast. We have one sponsor only, but it is Rupert G and the Hello Deli. Thank you very much for sponsoring our show, Rupert.
It's my honor, Mike.
La, 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 la. Welcome once again to the Letterman Podcast. As always, I am Mike Chisholm. As always, I am excited to be here. This is our first Christmas episode. That's right, all you detractors who back in April of 22 said, oh, what the heck is this thing? It's not going to last whatsoever. Well, joke's on you. We made it to Christmas, and we're real excited about it. What a Christmas it is. What a time it is. To be a Letterman fan in 2022. We did not think that we were going to say that back, say in 2014, say the very, very last Late Show Christmas episode, the last time Darlene Love came out on stage. And you know, we've talked to so many people who didn't know what was going to happen after when Dave left the airwaves, the terrestrial airwaves or the cable airwaves in 2015. But at the end of the day, at 2022, it's really nice to be able to say that it's a good time to be a Letterman fan, and it still is. One of the reasons why we started this show, and we've said this from the very beginning, our very first episode had a Letterman enthusiast community member as our guest. And of course, most of the shows that we've done this year have included and have been former staffers of Dave and folks who worked for the show. But we want to make sure that the Letterman Podcast always has members of the fan community and the enthusiast community. Tonight, and if we have our way here, every holiday season, every Christmas time we put out an episode, it's going to include some very special treats from our community members, and I can't think of one that will be more special than what we're going to have happen tonight. We've got a very special guest tonight. Marilyn Sargent is first off, she's an AFLer. Now, we haven't had a lot of the alt fan Letterman folks on here yet, but we're going to talk a lot about that because especially when the show was still running, there was some very cool things that would have Dave Con. We haven't talked about Dave Con on here other than a couple little moments here and there. We finally have some context to do that. Now, Marilyn has been inside that Letterman fan base for a long time. She's known Don Giller and people like that for a long time, had phenomenal experiences from the enthusiast perspective. And we could do an entire podcast on just each one of those experiences because they are so encompassing and we remember them now. But this is a Christmas episode, and we have something very special tonight here. We're actually going to play a piece of footage near the end of the episode of Dave actually reading one of the poems that Marilyn had submitted for years and years and years and years to the show. 'Twas my night at the Late Show. And we're going to talk about that here in a second. I'm very excited to have her on here. Very excited to talk about to someone else who had a very similar moment to mine. You know, my moment of immortality, as far as I'm concerned. Talking to Dave at the Q&A, Marilyn had one that was equally as special, equally as customized to her, and that will be represented in the video we show tonight. Lots of stuff to do, and it's happy holidays from the Letterman Podcast. Merry Christmas from the Letterman Podcast. Without further ado, we would like to invite Marilyn Sargent to the show. Marilyn, thank you so much for allowing me to pry my way in there and convince you to say, yes, you will be our Darlene Love for the Letterman Podcast. Thank you so much for this.
Well,
welcome to the Letterman Podcast.
Darlene Love, but I am very pleased to be here, Mike. Thank you. And
it's awesome. It's awesome that you're here. You're in your jacket.
I am.
Fantastic. You're wearing the colors, representing. Let's go back to the beginning in a sense. How long have you been a fan of David Letterman for?
I've been a fan for a very long time, but sort of toward the end of the late night era. So I am, like I've heard you say before, one of those people who is really late show oriented, has been there from the beginning. And the Late Show is really what always spoke to me, only because I really didn't see a lot. I was raising my kids, early on in late night. I just, wasn't as tuned in. I would love Dave. I'd see him toward the end, I got very excited about it and his, move over. But yeah, I'm a late show girl, and the poems that I had written for Christmas had always been late show, just strictly late show, starting back with the very first one, and all the way up.
Wow.
Yeah,
Okay, so your very first incarnation of this poem, and it's, of course, it's a take on "'Twas the Night Before Christmas."
it is. It is.
And perfect. It's got that beautiful melodic setup, and I mean, you can tell so many very, very clever stories, humorous stories with that setup, and people universally kind of know what it is. It's a very, very smart way to do this. The first year that you sent in that poem was in 94.
The first one actually was in 1998.
98. Okay, so he'd been at
Yes,
CBS for a few years. He
right.
gained the power. He was, our generation's Tonight Show.
Yeah.
At that point, Dave's at that point, he's bigger than the guest beside him. And your very first year that you sent it in, what now, I mean, obviously there are all sorts of ways that we can reach out to these productions that we adore so much. What
Right.
was it about the idea? Like, where did the genesis of coming up with a Christmas poem, where did that come from?
Well, actually, it had nothing to do with sending it in at all. This was part of our community in Alt Fan Letterman. I wrote this poem for the rest of the fans. So it never really was something that I was, giving the show. The show probably could care less about it. It was for the fans in my Letterman group. And so from the very
Okay.
beginning, they were always very sweet about it. They all, enjoyed it. They would say, as it would roll around in December, they'd say, "Oh, it's Christmas now, Marilyn put the poem up." And every year it would have a little something to do with what was going on. But I do want to share the first one with you, because we have, the last one, which was
Yep.
really like a jumble of all kinds of names and all the people. But you have to understand the first one before you can understand the last one. So I was wondering if I could read that to you.
Oh, of course. Now, before you read it to me, like let's set the stage here.
Okay.
What, like right now, Alt Fan Letterman is basically on Facebook. That's where I discovered it. It's been, back in 98, if I would have known that this thing existed, I would have wanted to be a part of it so much. I mean, what was it at that point? Was it a website? Was it a use group? How did you
Usenet. It
guys
was definitely
connect there?
Usenet back in the day. This would have been Usenet before Facebook. We migrated over to Facebook at a certain point when it just became all trolls, and Usenet kind of was going down the
Yeah.
tubes. It wasn't good. Wasn't a pretty scene. So one of our fellow gals was nice enough to get us all set up over there, and it really took off on Facebook. But first we were on Usenet, and that is, the forum was Alt Fan Letterman, and that's
Alt
where
Fan
AFL
Letterman.
comes from.
And Don Giller was there at the time,
Oh
right?
yeah,
I mean, folks who are around now were around then, like yourself. Like that's 25 years of hanging out together on the internet, talking about David Letterman and company,
yeah.
and other things too. I mean, when you get, you become friends, you develop bonds and relationships with these people over the years.
Absolutely. We share recipes, we get a kick out of that, and we would know what was going on a little bit in each other's lives, and we admired each other's work. We have a lot of very talented people, and people from all over, people from other countries are in there, and they have been there for years. And it's, that people would joke and just, it's just such a nice community. And I'll see it now in different, groups, like in a group for, say, fitness, that I belong to. I will see, wow, these people know each other. These people have been together for a while. That hasn't happened to me except in AFL. AFL is my, it's over now a little bit, not really over. It's never over. I mean, but during
It's
during the
evolved for
time
sure.
when we watched the show, we would riff off each other and we would share what we saw, and it was a great community. And a certain group of us would get together and go to the show. We were welcomed there annually and had a really great time. So yeah, it was an important part of my life, really. It really was. And I know
And
that sounds cheesy, but
it still
these
is,
people are really
obviously, to
important.
so many that are there.
Yeah.
And I love that so much. And I'll tell you this too. I was so grateful when I was invited into that community and to watch the people who have been around forever interact with each other and whatnot. It's such a beautiful thing to see. I love it so much.
Yeah.
Before we get to the first poem that you wrote, and for the AFLers, that just makes it even that much sweeter. Had you seen the show live yet at that point? By that point,
Probably, definitely, yeah. I'm quite sure. Yeah, I mean, I've been there many times, and it's funny. I have like a stack of tickets and stuff, but I've never been organized enough to really write down who I've seen, and it's a pretty impressive group. I remember Hootie and the Blowfish early on. That was when it was Hootie's first appearance, I think, and the Blowfish. And I was there for the Farrah episode where she was like, and that was something. I was there for Let's Go Looking for Swedes, and I mean, there's just been so many things that I've seen, and so Iggy Pop. I mean, so I can't even begin to tell you that I've been lucky enough to really see a lot. Yeah.
Well, we'll get into that another day. I can't wait we're going to do some episodes of some of the big moments that people got to see live. We're going to do we're going to focus on that. There's so much meat on the bone for what we can do with this show and what we're going to do with this show. Lots of exciting things. Obviously, this is a Christmas episode. We're focusing on that. So you're part of the AFL, and people contribute to these things, and it always feels good to contribute to these communities. You putting up a poem, the first time you put up the poem, do you remember, can you go back to that place? I mean, 98 was a long time ago, but were you nervous putting the poem in there to see what people would think, or was this just this, I'm excited, let's do this?
No, never nervous. No, I was never nervous. No, we were shameless. No one's ever nervous. If anything, it would be like, what's Don going to do? Not about a poem.
Yeah.
But we would be silly and we would start going off topic. And Don was like, this is about Letterman, okay. He put up with us, and yeah.
I suppose some things don't change, huh?
They don't. And of course we dragged him down with us. So, he loves his people on there as much as anyone else, and don't let him kid you.
Oh, he certainly does. And the video that we are going to play later on in this episode, I mean, of course it was cut. Don did such a masterful job cutting it. We'll talk about that actually. The way that it was presented was so beautiful. And I love the other thing about the video is we see your moment represented. Yeah. And it was, what a thing to be represented, to culminate. And you're about to kind of start that process right now by talking about the first one. But then we get to see you almost in an identical setting, reading the very poem that Dave references and highlights in the video. So it all started with this one here. So right away, you're like, okay, 'twas my night at the Late Show. Let's do this. 1998. Do you remember when you started writing it? Like, was this a stream of conscious thing where you like wrote it in December, put it out the next day?
Yeah.
Did you take a month?
Honestly, that's the way it is every year. And the last one was really the most important one to me, obviously. But that didn't take more than a couple of days. And when I did do it, I bounced it off of Don, like, should I include this or should I include that, and things like that. And, I actually had a New York Times, the word escapes me. One of my friends from the New York Times edited it. Yes, editor is the word I'm looking for. I can't edit my own thoughts. But yeah, editor, New York Times editor went through it. She made sure that I kind of had, things right in the way that I, put them. And so it was fun to say that it was but she's a member of our group, of course. Yes. And, I was like, should I add Meryl Marco? Should I not mention Meryl Marco? I'm so glad I mentioned Meryl Marco, because when he read it at the beginning, he didn't get into it, but he read her name, and it was neat. Yeah.
Yeah, there's so much that I would take from that moment, where if you and I to switch places with our moments, where I can just see that the feelings must be very, very similar. For me, it was when I made him laugh. Making Dave laugh on stage was like, and it was only for a second, because he laughed and then he immediately shot right back at me. Like, it was just, that's one of those feelings where it's like, oh my gosh, I can't believe this is happening. Your poem, let's get to the first one. So the very first incarnation, 'twas my night at the Late Show. Please, what do you got?
Okay. 'Twas my night at the Late Show. This is 1998. 'Twas my night at the Late Show, and all through the ed, not a creature was sleeping unless it was dead. The cameras were hung by the desk in each chair, in hopes that Dave Letterman soon would be there. The audience was nestled all snug in their seats, while visions of Letterman made their hearts skip 2 beats. With Calvert in a kerchief and Rupert in his cap, we knew we were in for a 1-hour nap. Eddie, the warm-up guy, was ready to go, and I knew in a moment it was time for the show. I guess band introduction time must have came, because he whistled and shouted and called them by name. Now Sid, now Felicia, now Anton, Al, Will. On Bones, on Bruce, and at the top of the bill, at the top of the bandstand with no red nose at all. Now clap away, here comes Paul. And then in a twinkling I heard on the stage the prancing and pawing of each CBS page. As I drew in my breath and was turning around, downstage David Letterman came with a bound. He was dressed in Armani from his head to his foot. Now that later changed to Sue Hum. He was dressed by Sue Hum, but I don't think she was there yet, but it did change. He was dressed in Armani from his head to his foot, his peninsula hairpiece, the color of soot, with a bundle of jokes thanks to Inky's hard labors. And I thought, wake the kids, phone up the neighbors. His eyes, how they twinkled, what a gap-toothed mouth, and a tie that was headed all the way to the south. The can of a ham he held tight in his hands, and he tossed it a bit before all of his fans. Leonard Tepper came out, a right jolly old elf, and I laughed when I saw him in spite of myself. Then with a toss of a pencil and a shake of his fist, he proceeded to read us his top 10 list. He finished his list and went straight to his work, interviewing celebrities who may think he's a jerk. Then laying his pencil aside of his nose and giving a nod, the show came to a close. He sprang to his feet, to his staff gave a whistle, and off flew his jacket like the down of a thistle. But I heard him exclaim as he walked out of sight, thanks for being here, come again, and to all a good night. There it is, the first one.
I had to mute myself because I didn't want the speaker thing to flip back, and I was gleeful. I haven't heard the first one intentionally. I didn't want to hear it. I didn't want to know it before this episode. That was delightful.
Well, thank you. I know it's a little cheesy, and I know I take liberties with the way I form a poem, but it was just fun, and obviously, it was well received, and then it started to change and take. Just looking down memory lane at these poems, I'm able to remember the things that happened in those years. So that's 98, for example. We go to 99.
Yep.
And it says, we knew in our hearts we were lucky to go to the Millennium's official Emmy-winning late show. So there we are. That's 99. So then 2000, we have the massive heart attack.
Yeah.
We knew it was a gift just to be here because of the scare we had earlier this year. Now, especially thankful for TV Boy's health, we were ready to share in the comedy wealth. So that's where that kind of changed.
I love. Okay, so first off, before we go to the next year and the next incarnations, the thing I love about it so much is how inside it already is. Like this is a fan poem. Like it really is. It has a lot of like little things like TV Boy. To me, that there's so much care in that because you're pulling direct vocabulary that hit the emotional heartstrings of people who appreciate this stuff so much. He's such a linguist, and these little phrases, unique phrases that he would pull, I just absolutely love how much care you put into these things.
Well, this is why I can't really share it with anyone else except the Late Show fan. I mean, even the writers would be like, well, I don't remember that. The writers.
Oh yeah.
So to share it with a fan who really watched the show, they're the only ones that get it. And of course, I could take it more inside with my AFL people. And once in a while, we joke, like somebody was on Jeopardy. He was a Jeopardy contestant, so I would stick that in there, and all kinds of funny things that, may have happened through the years, but really in keeping mostly with the show. For example, now we had the heart attack. Now we've got 2001. Obviously, 9/11 had just occurred. So that was Dave's sweet gift of laughter in a difficult year made my love for TV Boy even more clear. So there's TV Boy again. But yeah, that was the that one. Now we go to 2002. We've got the Oprah log. Remember the Oprah log? He stoked that Oprah, and it wasn't a Christmas Oprah log. It was just the Oprah log all year long. And so I had to add that. The theater was cool, but I was warmed by the nog and the radiant sparkle of Dave's Oprah log. Christmassy Oprah log. 2003 came along, and that was the birth of Harry. So his eyes, how they twinkled, he was especially merry. I knew his eye twinkle must be little Harry. Just things, things like that.
Okay, so at this point, are you also submitting the poem to the show, or is this just for the like, obviously some of the AFLers like Inky, like Tony Mendez, was very well aware of this stuff. You have people who were obviously, there's cross-pollination happening. The AFLers are obviously very well known to folks.
It made it to the show at one point, and I got a nice little note that was dictated from Dave to his assistant, maybe, that just said that it was very, thankful for the poem or whatever. And they sent me like
so they did know it existed at this point.
Yeah, but I'm not sure again that anybody, really pays much attention to it, but that I would make sure to get it there, or at least send it off. But I don't know, honestly, that they paid that much attention. Not until the last one when I brought the hymnal that Dave called the hymnal.
Well, we're gonna get to that. I want to hear all about that. Let's keep going. What are some of the additions and adaptations you did for each year?
So we went from 2003 with the birth of Harry to 2005. That was the year of bird flu and hyperphagia. Do you remember the Late Show Bear? So a lot of Late Show Bear that year. So it was my night at the Late Show, and all up in my view. Interns clapped in the aisle like they had the bird flu. If you're at the show, boy, they're a little bit over enthusiastic, and we used to laugh about that. His eyes, how they twinkled, his cheeks a fantasia. I felt I was in a comedy hyperphagia. to bring in the Late Show Bear a little bit.
Yeah.
2006. So that was fun. This is pervy Big Red. This is when Big Red was really getting into it, One
of my favorite.
So funny.
Oh, I loved Alan, and Big Red was just one of the greatest. Yeah.
So included was, then came some words from Big Red that were so terribly lewd. We were all in agreement. That's an inside joke instead of agreement. That's agreement that they were even rude. He can't say that on TV. There have to be laws. He can't do that with sugar plums and dear Mrs. Claus. Had to put it in. Love Big Red. He was nice too. He's one of those, staff members who always knew we were there when we were all there as a group. And, even when I wasn't with the group, I remember him handing out like a hand warmer to me and a girl that I had gone with. And so that was neat.
Yeah.
2007, it's the writer's strike now. So no audience was nestled all snug in their seats. Just visions of writers out hitting the streets. No skink in a kerchief or Rupert in a cap. Producers have dealt us a 1-hour nap. So, yep.
That right there, my friends, supporting of the writers right there. If nothing, even in your poem, supporting the writers. Here we go. Oh, that was beautiful.
You bet. 2008. There's a video version of this one. Which we have online, which was read from, I sat, my childcare was there, and I was reading from the Fun Fact book.
Yep.
And that was the year that George W. Bush had the Iraqi press conference where he had shoes thrown at him. And the shoe came flying. So I had all my daycare after I read it. They were whipping shoes at me. So that was fun to film. But in that one, it said that was when McCain canceled. And Lyle, I love Lyle. So Lyle always makes it. When out in the green room, there arose such a clatter. Staff ran up to Gaines to see what was the matter. The guests must have canceled, and with all of the strain and the economy imploding, it must be McCain. When what to my wondering eyes came instead, but Keith Olbermann and his big giant head. Again, obviously, I would never say such a thing about Keith, but that's a Dave joke. Okay, and then we have 2009, and that's the Fire Day version, and we have a live version of that on YouTube as well, with the daycare. Oh, thanks for putting it behind. You had your set.
There it is.
Yep, there she is.
The whole reason people are like, why do you care that Sarah Palin is going to endorse? Like, why do you care that she's going to say something about the podcast? It's right here. It's right here. It was a big deal that year. 2009
really
was the Sarah
was.
Palin
really
shenanigans.
'Twas my night at the late show, and outside the ed, normal creatures weren't stirring. There was a rally instead. 12 Palin worshippers, mostly retired, had hopes that Dave Letterman soon would be fired. So it is our little walk down memory lane, obviously. Yep. 2010, the Joaquin fiasco with Joaquin Phoenix, and the Super Bowl commercial. Both of them took place that year.
Yep.
So what to my wondering eyes should appear? Dave and Oprah with Leno trying to save his career. This was not even WikiLeaked. I needed a pinch. I guess Conan declined to appear with the Grinch. And shout out to Jay. I hope he's feeling good.
Absolutely.
Nice to see him.
Hey,
back.
We want him feeling good so we can make fun of him.
Right.
Right?
There you
better,
go.
Man.
There you go. His eyes, how they twinkled, what a gap-toothed grin. He had a squeaky impression of the guy with the chin. Cue up Mike Singletary. I'm not sure what he said. He's as strange as that thing on Donald Trump's head. Then I heard a ringing, a Jeff Altman phone call, and the mood in the theater was cast with a pall. Out came Joe Grossman with a bizarre interjection. Who is weirder than him? Always the horn section. Joaquin Phoenix strolled out, a right freaky old elf, and I laughed when I saw him in spite of myself. A difficult interview for my TV boy hero. I guess it could be worse. It could be De Niro.
All right, we're gonna stop there for a second because you just in one fell swoop shouted out 4 guests of the Letterman podcast this year. So we're gonna say happy holidays and Merry Christmas to Art Kelly, Mr. Mark Singletary on the show, to Joe Grossman, who we love, we adore you, Joe.
Absolutely.
So happy you're working for the Tonight Show this year. That's congratulations on that. You mentioned the horn section, so of course Tom Bones Malone and our boy Jeff Altman, who 4 guests on our inaugural year so far.
Wow.
Of the Letterman podcast, all mentioned in one fell swoop. Well done.
That's an accomplishment, I think.
Oh man, yeah. Well, and I mean, it just shows how we all sort of think on the same. Like, this is a family, and I'm so grateful to be part of kind of unearthing some of these things and talking to other people who feel the exact same way, who have never met from different sides of the continent, but are united with these things and feel this way. Talking to Joe again, talking to Joe a few weeks back, it'll be a month or so by the time this thing airs, but like, it was trippy. It felt so crazy, awesome, weird talking to him about this stuff and being able to deconstruct some of this stuff, because these are people who are poem inspiring, like just seeing them on screen,
Yes.
And
and he anyway years over and over, and
right
through the years, because he was important. I loved him. I
me too.
Taken with him there, and of course, I knew that he wasn't going to be smiling, so I did the same. I treasure that one as well, like some of my older ones.
One of the things with Joe in particular, like, I mean, take Jeff Altman. Well, we saw him acting funny and crazy with Dave since we were kids, right? But then Joe, you see him show up in the early 2000s and you're like, wait a second, this guy is like our age, and this guy is part of the fun. And
the our age thing I kind of get a kick out of, because I'm quite a bit older than you.
Are you? Well,
yeah, quite a bit older than you. I'm 60 this year. So
are you really?
Yes.
I would not have called that. Well, certainly your disposition in your heart does not show it. And I will say this is something that I used to describe myself on my best day. My inner child has his grubby little hands on the wheel. Like you have this energy about you that it just feels so vibrant, youthful, all of this stuff, playful, and I think a lot of Letterman folk have that. Also, there are some who have, crotchetiness, but that's okay. You're certainly in the former. But I'm saying the energy that we have towards these things come out in different ways. These poems are absolutely delightful. Where are we now? 2011?
Yes, we are. And that's Jeter's house and the fatwa. I had to look that up. I had to do a little research, because I'm like, I remember Larry David really got into that on Curb Your Enthusiasm, but it was a joke. But with Dave, it was not a joke. David Letterman had a fatwa on him. And he made hay with it. He had so much fun with it. He would come out and, he came out one night and said to the audience that you guys are more than an audience to me. You're a human shield. You're a human shield, something to that effect. I mean, he worked with that, but twas my
That
night
was
at
that
the
was that
show.
was a joke that he told to the audience before the camera started rolling.
I don't know that because I wasn't there, but I read about it. So
That's a beautiful joke. Oh, that's
somebody
that's
got a
such a
hold of
good
that
joke. That's
story about why. Sorry, I was late coming out here. He said I was checking about my life insurance policy. Like he would, that probably made the air. I don't know what he kept, but anyway. 'Twas my night at the Late Show, Ed Sullivan Theater, 12,000 feet smaller than the home of a Jeter. Do you remember Jeter's house? I did research on that too. It's about 12,000 feet smaller
oh.
in the theater because it was a big house. His eyes, how they twinkled. What a gap-toothed grin. Why would anyone want to fatwa him? What newt would do that? Why the metal detection? Then 3 hands went up. Always the horn section. Love them. I love them. I love when they did that.
Yep.
It was so special to me. Joe Grossman wandered out. Unusual elf. I heard on his honeymoon he threw up on himself. Now I'm not telling tales out of school. He said this on the show. And it was like, oh boy, okay. So now we are in 2012. 2012 was a big one to me. Why? Oh, it was the Weekend Late Show.
Oh my God, the Weekend Late Show.
Remember the Weekend Late Show?
Oh.
So it was.
I know somebody who has a mug from that, and I am really jealous about that.
Wow.
That's one of those
one.
things that I'm like, oh, I would really like to have that. That is a very cool prop gag they have.
So the poem started, 'twas my night at the Late Show, and all through the Ed, not a creature was stirring. The theater was dead. The set was all decorated in poinsettia and spruce. Imagine my shock. Out walked Linda and Bruce. Bruce's wink of his eye and shake of his head soon gave me to know I had something to dread. I'd made a mistake. It was the Weekend Late Show. I sprang from my seat and knew I had to go. Bruce spoke of avoiding online Christmas tree scams, and Linda did macrame on orange juice cans. I tried to run, stuck in gum, and then awoke with a scream in my nightcap and kerchief, for it was only a dream. So that's how I started that one, that I was in the wrong place. Then it was my night at the Late Show. I was so pleased to enter and see the new honoree of the Kennedy Center.
Oh,
so again, that was that year.
A little bit of heartfelt there, Marilyn. I love it.
Band reindeer spiel here.
Yep.
So, and then one by one, band introduction came, and he whistled and shouted and called them by name. Now Will, now Felicia, now Anton and Sid, on Bones, on Frank, on Aaron, but God forbid, 2 reindeer were missing. I hoped they weren't hurt. Swiftly, I issued an antler alert. I called up Len Easton. I suspect Dave's dog Sully. I fear they're funked up, taken down in a gully. I hoped they'd be harnessed, brought back to the band. The horn section would once again raise the right hand. I tell them how much I miss seeing them play. What's that? Oh, I'm being told they're okay. That was Al Chez and Bruce Kapler left the band, and yeah.
So that is a very nice little nod to them right there.
By
the way, the Weekend Late Show. Hey, Walter, if you guys haven't, we need a compilation of that. Yes. That and Tales from the Old West, the Tim Thomerson. I want to see more of that and some explication of that. I want to get Tim on here and talk about that. But yeah, Linda or Bruce, if you're out there and you want to talk a little bit about Weekend Late Show and that gig, yeah, we're here for you, buddy. Come on out, either one of you. So that's good. So we're on to 13. We
are, and this is Graham Fenwick Jones. Do you remember him?
Yes, absolutely. He
would come out with just what, and it was great. So 'twas a fortnight till the Late Show, keen as mustard the house, from Ipswich to Bindingle, bit of a big girl's blouse. The cameras were hung, Tootie picked to their rocker in hopes that Scatty Schuyler will be as black as Newgate's knocker. So I was just kind of doing his thing for a little bit.
Oh yeah.
But then I awakened, chilled to my bones. I had dreamt of the spirit of Graham Fenwick Jones. And then it went on to his eyes, how they twinkled. What a wonderful sight. 20 years at the network, still the stooge of the night. No more weekend late show to add to the drama, and no more Celebrigum. Thanks a lot, Obama. Celebrigum had ended then, and Steve gave it up. But that was then obviously that wasn't part of the show either. That's another inside joke that was sort of staff, and we kind of supported.
Well, we've talked about it on the show. We had Steve Young, obviously, and we talked about it that when in his first appearance here. Celebrigum. If you haven't gone and seen it yet, go find it. Genius piece of comedy. So simple, and yet at the same time clever. Beyond words, so good and great that it was included in 2013. Now we get to 2014, and you're not gonna, the way that you, the viewer, are gonna hear this is by watching the video that we're gonna finish this episode with. That's how it's gonna go, and we're gonna wish you all a Merry Christmas. But before we do that, we need to talk about you getting there. And this is, we'll talk about your other appearances another time that you come on the show. See, I'm presupposing you're going to come back.
Well, there's never appearances. I've never had any appearances, but this was amazing. This was a friend of mine when they had this. It's hard to get in there. It's hard to just randomly be able to see a Christmas show, especially the last one. But yeah, I think the staff had
So this was the night of the Darlene Love episode.
Yes, and it wasn't my first Darlene Love episode either. I've been there for this before. Wow. But this was the last one.
This is this is a culmination episode. The last meatball, the last everything. Did they throw footballs that night? They might.
Yes.
Yeah, that was everything. The Christmas Late Show episode, again, it's just, they were always special. But this one here, the very last one, I remember tearing up. I remember watching it on the other side of the screen, knowing it was the very last one. And, the gravity of that was just, you could feel it. Now, you knew how long in advance before the show did you know you had tickets for that night?
Gosh, I think it was only about a week that Cheryl got tickets and said, "Will you come with me?" I was so excited. We wanted to get muffs. We were going to buy muffs. And we wanted to go with muffs, but I couldn't find them. You can't really find a muff these days.
Yeah.
You had all kinds of,
Muffs RF closed 5 years ago, I think.
So, I had put together and this is going to be hard to believe, but I put together the poem. We put it on the hymnal here, and I brought many copies. So I got to the show. I saw Sue Hum at Hello Deli. I gave one to her. I gave one to Rupert. I gave one to every staff member that I could find. But I really didn't think about trying to get Dave's attention and giving it to Dave for the pre-show until I kind of started to go in there. And I'm like, lining up. And I said, what if, because, and I think you talked to another AFLer about when you're in the audience and you kind of, send me the juju that he'll call on me. And then you just put your hand up suddenly. And if you're lucky enough, there's a couple AFLers who've had a lot of luck with it. Me and Bill.
You're preaching to the choir. Me, it was a salmon jacket.
It's just like an energy. You're positive about it. And you just,
Oh my God. I love talking to you about this because I've told this story so many times when I do this, when I did that the night with the salmon jacket. And he talked to the guy at the end of the row first, and I'm like, oh no, if it's only one question, I'm screwed. And as he's talking, I've got my hand up like a teacher's pet who thinks that the first kid that was called on is given a wrong answer, and I'm ready to go, and you see him look at you and you feel there's an energy there. Like there just is. He finishes with the dude on the end and, okay, yes, sir. What's your question? And then suddenly it's an out of body kind of experience. And there's an energy to it, like you just said, and you exactly understand the feeling that I'm trying so desperately yet horribly to communicate. Like I just can't.
There's times that I'm going to raise my hand and it's not going to happen. He's just looking in the other direction. Yeah. But he got me a couple of times. And once he told me I looked like his sister, Gretchen. He actually was, you look like my sister,
Wow.
But this time, This time it was just like, the hand shot up. He called on me. I told him, and you'll see this, that I had a poem that I've been writing for 16 years. Oh, better be good, And it's like, no, I haven't been writing it for 16 years. It's only been a couple of days. But yeah, and I think it was such an experience because you talked about making Dave laugh. I didn't personally make Dave laugh, but Dave got my name wrong on the show live, and he doubled over. And it's on the show, the 2014 Christmas show, where he called me Carolyn, instead of Marilyn. And I think it was Will Lee was like, it's Marilyn, and what, Marilyn? Ooh. When he's like, whatever, but and another thing that we didn't make it to the pre-show tape that you're going to show, was that when it was all said and done, he took the poem, he gave it to somebody, and he said, go throw it out, or so go throw it in the garbage or something like that. And it was just like a joke, and no, just kidding. It was cute, and you could hear sort of a laugh, and that's why, because he was going to toss it out. But I think, and then he sat down with it during the segment that I hear that you like after the monologue, and he just started to peruse it live, going through it. Wasn't reading it really on air at all. This is only the pre-show, only your secret tape.
Yeah. Well, and I'm going to ask you about that. So what we're going to show here is we're going to show a video that was masterfully put together by Don Giller. And so you don't see Dave actually reading the poem, but you see footage of Dave, and then we hear the audio. Now, did you hear the audio? I guess you must have heard the audio before that video was ever conceived, right? How did it feel the first time you realized that your moment that was so special and in your heart was immortalized somewhere, and you got to actually relive it a little bit? That feeling, for me personally, that feeling was like shock, awe, so grateful to the universe for that.
I never thought that I would hear the pre-show, because the pre-show, generally you wouldn't think it's taped, or if it is, you're not going to see it. You're never.
So when did you hear it for the first time? Like, when did you know? Did you know it that holiday season, or was it years after the fact?
Probably January or so of that year that I heard it existed. I'm not sure when I originally heard it. I mean, it was, and if I did, it was sort of like down low. I couldn't share it, it was until, the powers that be allow it to be shared. But
can I ask who told you that it existed, or are we still keeping people's confidences?
No. I mean, it was Don that spoke to people, obviously, about who had it, if it was allowed to be out, and that sort of thing. And I don't think it was for a while. But
yeah, certainly not. Like, I mean, there's still we're years, the show's been over for years, and there's still some of these unaired episodes and clips and things like that some of us have been lucky enough to hear, but aren't able to be make out for public consumption yet. Hopefully.
And in the audience that night, I was wearing, I don't know if you can see this here, but there's a meatball on this tree. it's my pin with a meatball. And I was like, wanting to tell Dave about that. And he's like, just put the jacket on. I can't hear a word you're saying. So, okay, all right, put it on. Yeah. But it was great. And I came home that night because it was Cheryl and I, so my significant other is here. He doesn't know anything about it. I come home, I leave the jacket in the car, kept it all nice and quiet. And I'm like, we got to watch it live because I was there. And then all of a sudden it's like very clear that something's going to happen. And he's like, hey, did you write a poem about the Late Show too? And that was how we opened the show. And it was just to have that. And I made it into the top 10. It's like, then there was the World Series of Dreidel that was on that show. So they show this commercial for the World Series of Dreidel. And that's when it came back, and he's like, not too late to put that in your poem, Carolyn. And so, I mean, I was Carolyn from then on in AFL, and, you know.
Well, and I didn't get the joke at first, not at first anyway, but Dawn, when I came up with this idea a long time ago to have you on here, it was like within the first few weeks of the of the podcast. This idea of to have you on here to do this. And so anyway, Dawn would periodically message me back and say, have you heard from Carolyn yet? And I didn't get it at first, but now obviously I completely understand, which is funny because my night before Dave finished our exchange, he was making fun of my salmon jacket, which is what the callback he came out to the moment the show started, which was great. But the last line beforehand, though, he was like, that jacket, that's a nice little jacket. What color is that jacket? And I said, it's salmon. He goes, salmon? Who told you that? It's my wife. She picked it out. That's your wife right there? Yeah. And the thing I love about it, and it makes her laugh every time I say it too. This is my wife, Candace. Nice to meet you, Janice. Okay, Paul, let's go. And he called my wife Janice. And let's go. And it's hilarious, right? Like it's the funniest thing.
Oh yeah.
But anyway, so you've heard this, you now know that it exists, it's out there, the video shows up, you've got this beautiful coda to a memory that the universe is giving you this permission to see it forever and to view it forever. It still clearly brings joy. I can feel the joy coming through the computer.
I got a Christmas gift that year from Nick,
right?
And he took this, and at the bottom of my stairs, this has been framed. And then the pictures of me on the show are framed. So I come down the stairs and I see it right there in front of me, So yeah, it was a special moment. And, I hope that Dave knew at that moment too, that it means a lot to a lot of people, because he tends to play that down. But as he sat there and was reading this, it was fun too, because in part of the poem at the end, let's see. Now, I don't know if you're going to have the whole poem, because what you're talking about doesn't have it. It just has sort of that pre-show thing.
No, the video I have has the pre-show, and then it has you looking in that room with the jacket on, reading the entire poem of that year.
But I just wanted to share that he started to read, and you'll hear him.
Yeah.
Now, I'd better not cry, and I'll try not to pout, as I now thank the person the whole show is about. You filled our comedy stockings night after night. Our worldwide pants will no longer fit right. And then it went on. But as he started to read, he got to about, and I'll thank the person on the show is about, Dave, no
compliments.
No, he jumped to something else. Yeah. But as he talked about the different things that he saw, it was neat. It was neat to hear him share. And yeah, it was a great experience.
It's such a special moment, Marilyn, and I'm so grateful for you that you get to have this, and I'm really grateful you're able to talk about it, and you still feel the way that I hoped you would feel about it. It's identical to mine. Mine was April 20th. So it was 4 months after. Wow. It was literally the month before he retired. That was when my night happened, and I mean, it literally has a place inside my heart that it lives. And when I actually start talking about it to somebody, and I will, let's face it, I'll talk to anybody who will listen about it. It's still vibrant and alive and well. And talking to you about this, first off, I'm so grateful that you get to still live it as well, and you have the memories of it, and it is so special to you. It's such a beautiful moment to be able to meet people that you admire and have a treasured experience in that. So that's awesome. But second, this is exactly why we do this show. We started this show here, and we're starting to wrap. We're going to finish with the video. There's nothing better to finish with. You already, alluded to how the poem finishes. I don't know any other way that we can wish the enthusiasts, the community, whatever you want to call it, anybody who has stumbled across this Christmas episode after a night of drunken debauchery, perhaps on YouTube. I don't know, but anybody who has been a part of our journey here at the Letterman Podcast so far, hasn't even been a year, won't even be a year till April, but it is our first Christmas. There's a lot of love and care out here, and having a community member come and share her story. We want you to do this again next year. Maybe next year there might be a verse or two talking about my next guest or something like that. We'll throw that at you. So who knows what that's going to be. Before we do get going though, a new year is coming. I'm hoping that there's going to be a new slew of my next guests. Is there anybody I always say, is there 3 people? But I mean, whatever, we're doing, it's Christmas time. However, if your Christmas wishes of anybody for Dave to talk to on My Next Guest would come true, who are a couple names that you would throw out there?
It's funny because I tried to come up with something. I watched your Steve Young episode and I'm like, oh, I'm going to say Winston Churchill. I'm going to say the same ones he did. That's what I'm going to do. That's what I'm going to do. Because I don't know. Like if somebody asks my favorite movie and stuff, I'm not good at those questions.
Yeah.
Maybe AFL. How about that? He can talk to the people who can tell him how much that, he meant to us. And he's not dead, but, he doesn't give himself enough credit for how he entertained. And, a lot of it is the community that, it's just great.
Well, with what we're trying to do here, we've been accepted as a show into the AFL community. If we can do whatever it takes to build exactly what you were talking about. I mean, if 15 years from now, we can say that there are people who were here right from ground zero of our first episode and we've already had people who have met. I would love to see that continue. This is a phenomenal inspiration. I appreciate you so much. Before we move to the video, other than a Merry Christmas, is there anything else that you wanted to say, Marilyn?
Not really, but I did want to say Merry Christmas.
You have.
Merry Christmas, happy holidays, everyone.
Yeah.
And that's it.
I appreciate you so much. Thank you very, very much for sharing and being a part of this, going through the story of this beautiful, beautiful poem that you have told. My name is Mike Chisholm. This has been the Christmas edition, the very first Christmas edition of the Letterman Podcast. We're going to finish it off with an unbelievable.
Mike, I have
here
one
we go.
thing.
Yeah.
I have one thing, something
Yes.
that I think you might be interested in.
Yes.
This was a gift that was under the Late Show Christmas tree that day. Okay, there's one thing.
Awesome.
And
how'd you get that? Who got that for you? I
kind of stayed in the theater afterward.
Yeah.
And I should also say that people saw that I stayed in the theater afterward because, we were talking to the staff and they're like, you were a plant, weren't you? Like this was planned. They couldn't get over the fact. No, it absolutely was not. Here
Awesome.
is some asbestos that I need to. Oops. Yeah. So that's the snow from the theater. And then
shout out to Glenn Borders. Glenn Borders is very proud of that snow. Well done, brother. That's awesome.
This is an ornament that was on the tree. And if you look carefully, I didn't want to get off without forgetting. I don't know if you can see this, but there is sauce on this. That's
meatball
from
sauce?
Meatball, either from the meatball or the pizza.
Shout out to Rupert G.
There you go.
And Angelo's did the pizza, I think, and Rupert G did the meatball. Yep. Shout out.
Anyway, I just needed you to see that before.
No, that's fantastic. That's fantastic. Marilyn, you and I are going to do this again and talk about some of the other live experiences that we've had there and some of the different experiences. Thank you so much for everything that you've done. To our audience, happy holidays. Whatever your persuasion, whatever your holiday looks like, I hope that there is joy for you, for your family, everyone around you, whatever community that you're a part of. Merry Christmas. Happy holidays from the Letterman Podcast. And without further ado, one of the greatest moments for an enthusiast that they could ever have from Marilyn Sargent. Merry Christmas from the Letterman Podcast, everybody.
Anybody have any questions about what's going to happen here? Yes, ma'am, right there. What is your name, please?
My name is Marilyn.
Marilyn, where are you from?
I'm from Southington, Connecticut.
Southington, Connecticut. Good to have you here. What can I do for you, Marilyn?
For 19 years, I've been writing a poem called "Was My Night at the Late Show." It's about Christmas, and I would like to give you a copy.
Oh, God bless you. Yes, Alan, can you retrieve the poem? For 19 years, you've been writing this poem? Very good. 19 years. That must be echoes. Thank you very much. I certainly, let me see it, Alan. Let's take a look at it here. What do you do for a living, Marilyn?
I am a child daycare provider in my home.
Good for you. Wow, look at this.
That's it. Are you going to read some of it?
Last night at the Late Show and all through the Ed Sullivan Theater. Memories were stirring in my heart and my head. I looked with nostalgia at the desk and the chair that soon would be taken by Stephen Colbert. This is some piece of work.
My last night at the Late Show and all through the Ed, memories were stirring in my heart and my head. I looked with nostalgia at the desk and the chair that soon would be taken by Stephen Colbert. The audience was wistful and snug in their seats, with show and tell visions of the variety meets. When there, in the theater, I started to chatter. Folks gathered around to see what was the matter. More rapid than bingo was my gratitude came. So I whistled and shouted and thanked them by name. Thanks Dorothy, thanks Shecky, thanks Morty and Biff. Next time you're thrown a football, try not to whiff. Thanks Gerard Mulligan, you've done it in style. Thanks Jude, Sue, and Inky, and I can't forget Lyle. Thanks to the writers like Steve, Matt, Bill, and Joe. Gaines, Nancy, Maria, and girls who hi-ho. Thanks Hal, Harold, George Clark for all that you do. And thank you Mike McEntee, you've made us wahoo. Eddie Brill and the Spangles, Mujaber, Sarah Jewell, and the CBS Orchestra past and present all rule. Thanks digital media guys, Walter and Jay. Stuck in the web, but I'm being told they're okay. To the whole staff and crew, thanks for the laughter, the Sally Favali, and good luck hereafter. Thanks to the interns who've made the show greater. Laugh about that now, think about it later. Thanks Kay, Ray, and Bethany. Thanks Dr. Aroni. Rupert, thanks for the meat, and that's no baloney. Thank you, Chris Elliott, always good for a howl. Thanks Michelle and Kathleen, with her mouth so foul. Thanks Jean, take time off. Thanks Todd for the cues. It couldn't be easy filling big Cuban shoes. Thanks Dave Dorset, cameraman extraordinaire. We made this show Rob and the Late Show Bear. Thanks Johnny and Meryl for their inspiration. Thanks Graham Fenwick Jones, the king of translation. Thanks Pat and Kenny for each transcript spoof and all of the things you have thrown off the roof. Thanks Gary for manning the genius switch. Thanks who gives a rat's ass Pete Fatovich. Thanks Marv and Jack Hanna, a wacky wild sight, and Monkey Rock. Those guys, I mean, am I right? Friends Reed, Randall, Murray, there were none kinder. And thanks Johnny Dark and the girl with the grinder. Martin Short and Steve Martin, more Big Show amigos. Thanks for remembering. Thanks for the egos. Thanks Darlene and Jay Thomas for the traditions. Thanks to the guests, the comics, and the musicians. Thanks Les Foley-Tepper and Calvert DeForest. And thank you to Letterman's Lemon Tree Florist. Thanks Wendell, Ben Coulter, Big Red warm-up announcer. I think I was too loud, because then came the bouncer. For there, like a man on fire, right in my face, was the unamused presence of one Bill DeLace. Get out, he shouted, and stop all that thanking. I was one stupid human trick away from a spanking. I drew in my breath, but I'd deal with this foo. I thought, is this anything? And then I thanked him too. And thanks to the fans, for although the show ends, I know for a fun fact we'll all be like friends, because no charts and graphs, no quiz machine too, would measure the top 10 things we've all been through. We know our cuts of meat, and if they'll sink or float. We've all watched Paul Schaefer in a cape and a coat. We need no intuitive like that Deborah Lynn to be certain it never was Lance on that Schwinn. Now I'd better not cry, and I'll try not to pout, as I now thank the person the whole show is about. You filled our comedy stockings night after night. Our worldwide pants will no longer fit right. From Warren to Farrah to Drew on the desk. Even in times of trouble, you were the best. No more dog and pony show to delight and inspire, but we wish you much happiness as you retire. So please hear me exclaim as you move out of sight. Thank you, David Letterman, and to all a good night.
Overcoat and underpants.